The rain hammered against the city streets of San Francisco like thousands of tiny bullets falling from the sky. Cars rushed past with glowing headlights, people hurried under umbrellas, and somewhere in the middle of all that noise and movement walked a man carrying everything he had left in the world inside a small, worn-out bag. Beside him was his little son. The boy was only 2 years old, too young to understand why they kept moving from place to place, too young to understand why his father looked so worried all the time, too young to understand they had nowhere to go. The man's name was Chris Gardner. And on that night, he was completely homeless. But if you had looked into Chris's eyes at that moment, you would have seen something strange. He was exhausted, he was hungry, he was broken financially, but he was not defeated, because deep inside him burned a fire stronger than poverty. A promise. A promise that his son would never grow up feeling abandoned the way he once had. Years earlier, Chris had grown up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in a home filled with pain and violence of minds. His biological father was absent. His stepfather was angry and abusive. Many nights Chris heard screaming inside the house. Many days he watched his mother struggle just to survive. As a child, he often sat quietly by the window, wondering why life seemed so unfair. But one day, while still young, he made a silent promise to himself. When I become a father, my children will know I love them. I will never leave them. That promise stayed inside him for years. After serving in the Navy, Chris moved to San Francisco, hoping for a better future. At first, life seemed hopeful. He got a job selling medical equipment. The machines were expensive bone density scanners that doctors used in hospitals. Chris walked from hospital to hospital, carrying the heavy machine, trying desperately to convince doctors to buy it. Sometimes he made a sale. Sometimes weeks passed without earning anything. Every day became a battle. Bills piled up. Arguments at home became worse. Stress slowly destroyed his relationship with the mother of his son. Still, Chris kept fighting. Every morning he put on his best suit, smiled at people, and pretended life was under control. But inside, he was drowning. One afternoon changed everything. Chris was walking through San Francisco's financial district when he noticed a man stepping out of a bright red Ferrari. The man looked confident, successful, powerful. Chris stared at him for a moment before finally asking two simple questions. What do you do? And how do you do it? The man smiled casually. I'm a stockbroker. That was it. One sentence, one moment, one spark. For the rest of the day, Chris couldn't stop thinking about it. Stockbroker. The word echoed in his mind again and again. He had no background in finance, no college degree, no wealthy family, no connections. But something inside him whispered, why not you? Most people would have dismissed the dream immediately, but Chris was different. When life closed one door, he searched for another. So he began studying stockbrokers, learning how the financial world worked, asking questions, making phone calls. Eventually, he applied for a stockbroker training program at a respected financial company. The competition was brutal. Dozens of intelligent, educated candidates wanted the same opportunity. Chris arrived wearing an old suit with worn-out shoes, but his determination was impossible to ignore. After several interviews, he received life-changing news. He had been accepted into the training program. But there was one terrible problem. The internship paid nothing. For 6 months, he would work full-time without salary while studying for difficult financial exams. Most people would have refused immediately. But Chris looked at his son and accepted, because sometimes the only way forward is through risk. At first, he believed he could survive somehow. But life became merciless. His girlfriend left. Bills remained unpaid, rent piled up. One afternoon, Chris returned home and discovered the landlord had locked the apartment. Everything they owned was gone. Chris stood outside, staring at the locked door while his little boy held his hand silently. That was the moment reality hit hardest. They were homeless. Days turned into nightmares. Chris and his son slept wherever they could. Cheap motels, church shelters, bus stations, subway stations. Some nights they slept outside. During the day, Chris continued pretending everything was normal. He woke before sunrise, cleaned himself in public restrooms, put on his wrinkled suit, dropped his son at daycare, then rushed to the brokerage office. Nobody there knew the truth, They saw a hardworking trainee with ambition. They did not see the homeless father sleeping in train stations at night. Chris worked harder than anyone. While others relaxed during lunch, he made extra cold calls. While others slept, he studied financial books. He memorized stock market terms while standing in shelter lines for food. His entire life became one mission: survive long enough to create a better future. Then came the night that changed him forever. It was cold, very cold. Chris had nowhere left to go. Shelters were full, hotels cost too much. The streets felt dangerous for a child. Desperate, Chris took his son into a subway station restroom. He locked the door, spread a thin blanket on the floor, and held his son close while the little boy slept peacefully beside him. Outside, strangers knocked on the door angrily. Chris pressed his foot against it to keep it shut. Then slowly, silently, tears rolled down his face. Not loud tears, quiet tears, the kind that come when a human being reaches the absolute edge of despair. He looked down at his sleeping son and whispered softly, "I'm sorry." At that moment, Chris had two choices: give up or fight harder than ever before. That night, sitting on a bathroom floor beside his child, he made the most important decision of his life. No matter what happens, no matter how hard this becomes, I will never stay here forever. The next morning, he went back to work, and something inside him had changed. He became unstoppable. Pain no longer scared him. Embarrassment no longer mattered. Fear no longer controlled him. Because once a man survives his darkest moment, everything else becomes smaller. Weeks passed, then months. Chris continued living between shelters and subway stations while competing against trainees who had comfortable apartments, money, and support. But Chris had something stronger: purpose. He was not working only for success anymore. He was fighting for his son's future. Finally, the day of the licensing exam arrived. The exam was difficult. Many failed. Chris sat quietly in the room, remembering every sleepless night, every rejection, every moment of hunger. And then he began writing. Hours later, the results came. He passed on his first attempt. Out of all the trainees, only one person would receive a permanent position. That person was Chris Gardner. The company's manager later admitted he had never seen someone work with such intensity and determination. For the first time in months, Chris had a real paycheck, a real opportunity, a real future. Soon after, Chris rented a small apartment. It wasn't luxurious, the walls were plain, the furniture was cheap, but when his son slept peacefully in a real bed that night, Chris sat alone in the kitchen and cried again. This time they were tears of victory. Years passed. Chris continued rising in the financial world. He learned everything he could, worked harder than ever, built connections, took risks. Then in 1987, he started his own brokerage firm with only $10,000. People doubted him again. A homeless man becoming a successful businessman? Impossible. But Chris had stopped listening to doubt a long time ago, because anyone who survives sleeping on a bathroom floor learns an important truth. Nothing in life is impossible once you refuse to quit. His company grew rapidly. Millions of dollars flowed through his business. The homeless father became a millionaire entrepreneur. Eventually, the world learned his story. Books were written about him. Interviews followed. A Hollywood movie inspired by his life touched millions of people around the world. But despite all the money and fame, Chris always said his greatest achievement was not becoming rich. It was keeping the promise he made as a little boy. His son grew up knowing his father was there, always there. And maybe that is the real meaning of success. Not money, not fame, not expensive cars, but becoming the person you promised yourself you would be. Today, somewhere in the world, someone is struggling exactly like Chris once did. Someone is sitting in darkness wondering if life will ever improve. Someone feels invisible, hopeless, tired. Maybe that someone is you. If so, remember this. Chris Gardner once slept on a public bathroom floor with his child beside him. And still, he changed his life completely. Your current situation is not your final destination. The pain you feel today may become the strength that transforms your future tomorrow. But only if you refuse to give up. Because sometimes the people who change their lives are not the smartest, or the luckiest. They are simply the ones who keep moving forward after everyone else stops. And somewhere tonight, another person is holding a door shut against the world, praying tomorrow will be different. Chris Gardner's story proves something powerful. Tomorrow can be different, but first, you must decide not to quit today.